Hello everyone, and welcome to the video tutorial on how to use Monitor My Watershed. Before we get started on how to use Monitor My Watershed, I want to talk a little bit about the platform itself. Monitor My Watershed is an open online data sharing platform that enables individuals, organizations, businesses, and many more people to monitor, access, analyze, and collect raw data from Enviro DIY sensors, and as well as leaf pack network data from all around the world. Our goal is that this resource will create a wealth of high-quality, real-time data that transforms the practice of environmental science, resource monitoring, and watershed protection. So the first thing I'd like to show you is how to sign up or create an account for Monitor My Watershed. While using Monitor My Watershed, it's not necessary to create an account in the sense that all information available on the site is available with or without an account. However, making an account on Monitor My Watershed can help streamline the process for users who are frequently checking specific sites on the map. So in order to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is hit sign up, and that's going to direct you to monitormywatershed.org/register. And then you'll be prompted with this screen that looks like this. You'll be asked to put in your first name, your last name, an email address to go along with the site, your username and password. And then you'll be asked to select an organization that you're with. You can do that by hitting the drop-down bar, and it'll show you a bunch of different organizations that are already registered and have information on Monitor My Watershed. So if you're with a specific organization that's already included on this list, you can go ahead and select that. If you don't see one, or you don't see your specific organization on the drop-down menu, you can add a new organization, which will take you to a pop-up that looks like this. And you can add in as much information about your new organization that you wish to add. They'll ask you to enter in an organization code, the name of your organization, the type of organization that your group is, a general description, and then a link to your organization that you're wishing to add. And once you do that, you can hit add new organization. Adding an organization to your account is optional, so you don't have to do that, but it makes finding information already existing with that organization easier to find when you're actually in the application. So it's optional, you don't have to include it, but it will help in the long run if you're with an organization to include it when you register. And then you'll be asked to agree to the terms of use, which I recommend reading through. And then you'll click register, and then you'll create your own account. So after you've created an account, it'll log you right in directly into the Monitor My Watershed application. So you won't need to go through the separate process of logging in after you've created an account. There's no wait period of having to confirm the actual account information, so you're able to use Monitor My Watershed as soon as you have created the account. After you've created an account, if you've logged out and want to log back in, the next option that you can do is to choose to log in. So up on the right-hand corner again, you'll see an option for login. So we can click login, and it'll direct you to monitormywatershed.org/login. And from here, you'll put in your username and your password that you've created when you first originally created your account. And then that will get you started and created, and will get you to your login, will get you to your account on Monitor My Watershed. So after you've created an account, the application will load to this screen. As you can see, the bar is mainly the same, except My Sites got added to the top, as well as that you're logged in with whatever username you chose to select. When you're met with this page, they give you a bunch of information, including sharing and exploring data sets with Enviro DIY, sharing and exploring macroinvertebrate data with leaf pack network data sensors, and then other tools available through Wiki Watershed, including Model My Watershed, a runoff simulation, Enviro DIY sensors, leaf pack data, and the water quality mobile app for Monitor My Watershed, which you can explore in further detail if you wish here where it says View Site. So we can then go from there and look into more of what the application itself holds. So after you've created your account, the first thing that will pop up is My Sites. So we can click on My Sites. That's up in the top left-hand corner. And when we click on My Sites, it'll bring you to monitormywatershed.org/sites. And it'll bring up any sites that you have registered or sites that you're following. They'll give you a map showing where your sensors are. Right now, I don't have any set up with my account. I'll show you how to follow those, and we'll come and check that in a little while. So here they show you the registered sites and the sites that you followed. If you're interested in creating a site, you would click register a new site, which would bring you to monitormywatershed.org/site/register. And you could fill in the information there, including the site code, the site name, the site's type, whether it's a stream or like a tidal stream or a water quality station, etc. The name of the stream, the major watershed it's connected to, the sub-basin, the closest town, the latitude, longitude, elevation, and other elevation data, as well as any notes that you have with that particular sensor that or the site you're creating. And then you can register your site. And then underneath that is the sites that you followed. So I will show you later in the video about how to follow sites and what this page looks like after you've followed them. So after the My Sites page, the next major part of Monitor My Watershed that you can use is under the map on the left called Browse Sites. So we'll click on that and that will load this page. By clicking on it, it'll bring you to monitormywatershed.org/browse, where they will give you a map of all of the different sites available where different sensors or where different information is collected. The map that you see here, I'm zooming out so you guys can see everything. There's sensors from around the world, including some in Asia, New Zealand, Mexico, all over the place. For our purposes, we'll stick with the United States. So I'll zoom back in. And you'll be greeted with something that looks like this. So as you can see on the legend on the right-hand side, each of these different arrows or drop arrows that you see corresponds to a different site that is recording data on Monitor My Watershed. Each color of the site will depend on when the last data piece was uploaded. A dark green will be updated in the last 6 hours. A lighter green will be in the last 72 hours. A yellow arrow will have been uploaded or updated in the past 2 weeks. If the sensor is red, the sensor is out of date. If it's gray, the sensor has no data associated with the site yet. And if it's this lovely blue color, then it only has leaf pack data, which specifically talks about the number of macroinvertebrates found at that site. Similarly, the arrows will come up different for sites you own versus sites that you don't own. Sites that you own will have a taller, pointier arrow on the bottom of the drop arrow, and sites that you don't own will be shorter. So there are a couple different ways to then gather and look for a specific site. If you know what specific site you're looking for by name, you're able to type it in up at the search bar. So if I was to pick one, there's an example of a Pike Creek sensor at an independent school near where I am. You can type in the name of the site and it'll pop it up. Another way to navigate through the Browse Sites portion of Monitor My Watershed is to use the filters available on the left-hand side to filter out different information that you're looking for to possibly identify a site that could work for what you're trying to achieve. So there are a couple filters. The first one shows the data types. The first option is Enviro DIY. Enviro DIY typically includes a sensor that measures conductivity, water depth, temperature, and turbidity, and leaf pack information, which monitors macroinvertebrate data and gives you an overall look of the water quality of that specific body of water that you're observing. The next thing that you can do is search for organizations that may have the data you're looking for. So, for instance, if you were part of the Berks County Conservation District, or if you're looking for information from that organization, you could click on that check mark and it will file out, and it'll just highlight the sources that are logged with that organization. Then from there are a lot of choices for the different organizations. And then you could specify the site type and the type of site you're looking for information for. So if you're looking for information about a stream and a tidal stream, you could select those. And it'll show you which sites potentially fulfill that information. So for instance, if we wanted to find a site that had Enviro DIY material, we could check Enviro DIY, and it'll remove out any kind of leaf pack information. You can then pick an organization that you're affiliated with. So for our purposes, we can go with Berks Nature. And so then the application monitor in my Watershed will remove any other organizations. You can scroll down to the bottom. And then the next filter that we can pick from is the site type. So there are a bunch of different site types that you can pick from, including monitoring land, monitoring a stream, which we have selected here, as well as a bunch of other ones, including tidal streams, water quality stations, weather stations. A bunch of different site types exist. So for our purposes now, we'll look for a stream. So we can pick this stream here. And then so what you'll be prompted with is a pop-up box that shows you information about the site, including the site code, the site name, the latitude, the longitude, the elevation, and the latest data measurement taken. So specifically for this site that we selected, we can see the site code is MSPR2S. The site name is Punches Run in Nodal State Forest. The latitude is 40.27. The longitude is negative 75.95. The elevation is 176 meters. And the latest data measurement collected by this site was February 18th, 2020 at 1:45 p.m. So from there, we are able to then view more data for this site by clicking View Data for this site. So when you bring up the site, the first thing that you'll be presented with is the name of the site as well as the site code provided in the previous pop-up box when you learned about more of the generic information about the overview of the site. You'll also be presented with the option to follow the site. So if you're logged in and have an account, you have the option to be able to follow a specific site. So if you were interested in following the Punches Run in Nodal State Forest, you can click the follow button. And now by doing that, you'll get a pop-up saying that you followed this site. And then, if we were then to click on My Sites, we could see that we are now following that specific site that we followed. Then to go back to the main site for learning about information, there's a bunch of information that you can get from this particular site, more than just the information that appeared in that pop-up box. So for instance, you can see who this site was deployed by, the organization who deployed it, the registration date for which the actual sensor was registered, the deployment date for which the sensor was deployed, the approximate latitude and longitude of the specific sensor, and the elevation in which the sensor is, as well as for this particular site, you can see that this is a stream type. Specific stream name is Punches Run, and you're also able to see in the notes section that this particular sensor comes from Stroud. So when you see SL, it means Stroud Logger. So in the notes, this particular site, it says SL168, which means the Stroud Logger used by this site was Stroud Logger 168. In these notes, it also says that the 4G cell service that allows the information to be uploaded to Monitor My Watershed is available starting in 2019, which means it already has, and that's wonderful. Other information that can be included in this box includes elevation datum, as well as major watershed, the subbasin, and the closest town. So this information that is provided in this first box is uploaded and created by the user. So whatever user uploaded and registered this site provided this information when they created the site. So for some sites, some of this data might be available, all of it might be available, but for this site in particular, what we're looking at right now, we have the information I mentioned before. If we continue to scroll down, you can see that there's different observations for the site. So if you were interested in downloading all of the sensor data, you're able to click download sensor data here. So this will download all of the information available for the specific sensor. So we'll click here, and downloading all the sensor data may take some time. So another important note about this is when you hit download on this site, there is no loading option. So on a Mac, for example, there's a spinning what looks like a beach ball with multiple colors on it of the rainbow. That indicates that it's loading. However, on Monitor My Watershed, that's not an available option. So you won't be prompted, or it does not show that your request to download that information is going through. That being said, if you click on it, it will go through. It just needs some time to actually download. So once the information has downloaded from Monitor My Watershed, it'll come up as an Excel sheet. So we're able to open and launch that on our computer, which again may take some time to load. To view all of the different variables available from each site on one graph, you can click on this button here, which will load Time Series Analyst and will load all of the variables from that site into Time Series Analyst so they can be viewed as a graph. However, we're going to look at the other information that the site provides, and then we'll look at Time Series Analyst next. Every variable for what Monitor My Watershed has will provide a cell that looks like this. So in each cell, they'll give you the name of the variable, a graph showing the last 72 hours of the data, the last observation, the date and time of which the observation was collected, as well as the last data point collected, the medium that the sensor is in, as well as the full name of the sensor. So if we were to look at this particular cell here, this cell is showing us the water depth for our site. So this table shows the last 72 hours worth of data for the water depth for our particular site. The last observation was recorded on February 18th, 2020 at 2:05 p.m., which is 5 p.m. UTC. The water depth was 244.5 millimeters. The medium in which the sensor was in was a liquid aqueous, so that means that the sensor was in a liquid, and that's where they're drawing that information from. And the full sensor name for the sensor for this particular cell is Decacon CTD-10 Electrical Conductivity Temperature Depth Sensor. So that's the full name for that sensor. If you're interested in looking at more information about this specific variable, you have three options. First, you can click on this icon here. This icon will open up Time Series Analyst. When you click on this button, it loads just that specific variable into Time Series Analyst for you to analyze. The next option is to the right. If you were to click on Download Data, download all information for that specific variable from this site. And if we were to click Download Data, which we'll do now, that's very similar to what it's like when you download the data for the entire site. So when we click on that, there is no loading sensor to let you know that you clicked on the actual button. And every time you click on it, it will load another version of the Excel sheet. So click on it once and be patient, and it will load. Once the information loads, you can open up the information in an Excel sheet. The last available thing that you can do with Monitor My Watershed for individual variables is click the data table here. So when clicking on this, it shows you the last where it shows you a data table with the last 72 hours worth of information. This includes the timestamp, the UTC offset, and then the specific value. So this data table that we just saw is the data that is corresponding to the table that we see in each individual cell. Another thing I'd like to point out is if we scroll down, each different cell could have a different unit. It could also have a different medium, and it can also have a different sensor. So for example, the next cell option for this particular site is temperature. So it's set up the same way. It has the last 72 hours worth of information. It has the last observation time, and it has the data value for the last observation site. And it shows that the unit for temperature in this case is in degrees Celsius. Then if we were continue to scroll down, the other example that I wanted to show you is temperature. So here on this site, there's two different temperature options. There's this temperature that we showed here, and then there's another temperature option that is shown here. There's two different options for temperature. The first one that we saw, if we were to look at it, the medium is in a liquid aqueous solution, whereas this temperature, it says equipment. So this specific temperature comes from the actual equipment box in which all of the information is stored, usually outside of water. So when we have this temperature, when it says equipment, it's taking the temperature of the air around the equipment, whereas with the other value, it's taking the temperature of the water that the sensor is in. Also available on some sites is the macroinvertebrate data. However, for this site, we don't have any macroinvertebrate data, and there's only 6 sites on Monitor My Watershed right now that do. It's in its very beginning stages. So for now, we're going to skip over the macroinvertebrate data or the leaf pack network data. However, in the future, when that becomes available, it would be at the bottom of that specific site. So as I mentioned before, we can go and open time series Analyst with all of the different variables for the specific site. And so to do that, we can click this box here, and it will load time series Analyst. Time series Analyst, like downloading Excel, may take a little while, so give it some time and it will load. So once that loads, you'll be greeted with something that looks like this. So when you open time series Analyst, for all of the variables shown for the site that we're looking on, so for instance, when we're on the punches run and nodal state forest, they have water depth, temperature, conductivity, turbidity, another turbidity, a temperature, battery voltage, signal strength, and percent full scale. If we were to open time series Analyst, we have all of those different variables available to be shown in time series Analyst. In order to see more information or to see the different variables on a graph, we'll click the box under plot. So we can click water depth, temperature, turbidity, and other turbidity and temperature. So just for this example, we'll click these 5 here. You will then hit visualize, which will also take a little while to load because it's loading all of the information from all 5 of those variables onto a graph and then graphing them. So once you hit visualization, you will have a graph that comes up. So the first thing that you'll see is a graph right in the middle of the page. Before we go over the details of the graph, I want to talk about the information on the side. So the first thing that you'd see on the right-hand side is plot options. So users can select different ranges of data to view. So the user has the choice to view the data on a graph for all of the information available. The user has the option to show the data from the last month. It also has the option for the last week. Users are also able to enter custom dates. So for instance, if you wanted to look at the past 10 days worth of information, we can click in the end date. We can put today's date, which is the 18th. And if we wanted to look at the past 10 days, we would skip forward to February and we would go back to the 8th, which would be 10 days. We also have the choice of the type of graph that we wish to see. So the first option is time series, which is what we're seeing on the main graph here. You can also choose to make the data appear as a histogram, or it could appear as a box and whisker plot. But for our sake, for this video, we'll be doing time series Analyst. So once you have specified what kind of time period you're looking for, you can hit plot. And then it will plot that series of information from the beginning date that you specified to the end date that you specified. If we were then to scroll down, the next thing that you'd see is a legend. So when you're graphing things on Time Series Analyst in Monitor My Watershed, you can graph a maximum of 5 different variables on a graph. Each variable will have a specific color that will always follow a specific order. So for instance, the first variable will always be blue, the second variable will always be orange, the third variable will always be green, the fourth variable will always be red, and the fifth variable will always be purple. If we were to continue to scroll down on the right-hand side, Monitor My Watershed also provides summary statistics. One of the reasons that Time Series Analyst takes a little while to load is whatever time information that you selected above. So for instance, we put in the last 10 days here. The summary statistics shows the summary of all the information collected for the past 10 days. So we were able to determine that the arithmetic mean was 240.28. They also have a maximum data, a minimum data point, the standard deviation, and the bell curve information if you were to graph or plot the information from 0% up to 100%. It also includes the number of observations from that specific time period. Another interesting thing about the legend is you can select up to 5 variables to graph. However, for instance, if you wanted to compare just the 2 turbidities, you can unclick the variables that you picked and just show those 2. Then if you wanted to compare turbidity to water depth, you can add another variable in. And then you continue to add or subtract variables from the graph. But you can only have a max of 5 when you're picking them in the data sets option. Then we'll move on to the graph. So the main graph you see here shows all of the 5 variables on this one particular graph. So for the sake of making it easier to read, let's pick the temperature value, so it's a little easier to read. So on this main data table, they'll graph the information or the specific variable that you're looking for from the beginning date to the end date on the axis. You're also able to scroll through the lines to find a specific date and time and a specific data point. So for what we're doing here, the temperature variable that we're looking at is orange. So if we were looking at this date here for February 12th, 2020 at 5:20 p.m., the temperature of the specific site was 6.82 degrees centigrade. Along with generating a graph, Monitor My Watershed will automatically generate axes that fit the data best. The graph has some other options to actually manipulate the view that you're seeing. So along the bottom is the x-axis that shows the dates and the time for when all the data was uploaded. If we were to look at directly underneath the main graph, you'd see a smaller graph, which we can manipulate as well. And what that graph allows us to do is allows us to zoom in on a specific period of time. This is the way that we would zoom in on the x-axis, is by highlighting the information below. So with this graph on the bottom, the only way to change the dates and times on the bottom is to manipulate the dates under plot options. The graph below, the main graph down here, that allows us to zoom in and look at specific information while still maintaining this date range. So for instance, if we want to take a look at the water depth information for February 12th to 13th, we can left click and drag for the date that we want to look at. So here, it still shows the entire information for the whole graph. So all of the information, if we were to zoom out on the x-axis, would still be in that 10-day range we selected. However, this has allowed us to zoom in between the 12th and 13th and just look at that information on that axis, which you can see is confirmed down here, that the start time is February 12th and the end time is February 13th. So if you were interested in looking at the data for February 9th and 10th, you're able to drag the box over to look at that specific time frame. So you can view it from February 9th to 10th. You're also able to make the width of the box bigger. So if you were interested in seeing February 9th to the 14th, you can drag that box out and it will show you from the 9th to the 14th. And then if you're interested in making the box smaller, so if you only wanted to see half of the data from February 9th, you can make this box smaller as well. So this is the way that you would use to zoom in on the x-axis to see the data on like a more zoomed in scale. To bring it back to all of the data, what you would need to do is make this box bigger and include all of the information on the timeline, like this. So if you wanted to zoom in and out on the y-axis, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. So with the y-axis, if you have a computer that has access to a mouse, the way that you would zoom in would left click and then you would roll the disk forward to zoom in and then roll the disk back to zoom out. If you don't have access to a mouse, the easiest way that I found to zoom in and out is, in order to zoom in, you would click on the axis and you'd hit Control and then double click, which will zoom in on the axis for you. And then in order to zoom out, you'd hit Shift and double click, which will zoom you back out. We're also able to add multiple variables onto this graph. So for instance, we have these variables that we selected when we opened up time series Analyst with all of the site information. So we can add these back onto the graph. And this will show all the graphed information for this particular site that we were interested in. So if we wanted to compare the two turbidities, we could remove variables and just have those two variables up on the screen. However, there's more that we can do with this. So if you wanted to compare temperatures across two different areas on a stream, you can do that. You can also compare turbidities across two different streams. So with Monitor My Watershed, you have the ability to compare variables from the same site or different sites. So if you were interested in graphing from different sites, the first thing that we would need to do is to clear this legend on this graph first. So in order to clear the existing legend, we would hit the little X here to remove the different variables that we have already selected. Each time we deselect one, it'll bring us up to the top of the menu, so you'll have to scroll back down to the legend again to delete all of them. So after we've cleared all the variables, you'll be shown a blank screen like this. So in order to add more variables, we need to go back to datasets. And so it currently shows us that we have the punches run in node state forest selected. So in order to clear that, we can uncheck the box here. And we can also clear all filters here. And that will get rid of any of the filters that we have selected for any of the options in Monitor My Watershed's time series analyst side menu. So like browse sites, on the left-hand side, there's a menu bar where you can filter out information that you're looking for. The first option to filter data with is the type of network. So normally there'll be Enviro DIY, that pops up. The next different available filter is the site. So this is the actual location and like site name of the different sites available. So they'll offer you 6 different site names. And if the site that you're looking for isn't included on here, click or show more. So once you hit show more, you'll be presented with all the different sites available through datasets. So unlike the browse sites option, there is no search bar in the sites. So if you're looking for a specific site, for instance, if we were looking for a site near Pike Creek, we would hit Control F, which will pop up a menu in your actual computer, and then you type in what you're looking for. So for instance, I want to find Pike Creek. Which we could then select if we wanted to. Then from there, they also provide you with variable categories, some of which include water quality, climate, and hydrology, and then the different variables available. Just like this, if you're looking for a variable that isn't shown in the 6, you can hit show more, and it will show you all the different variables available, which you can use then Control F to find. So if you were looking for dissolved oxygen, for instance, you could type that in on the search bar here and select that as well. So that's how you would use the filter bar on the left. Another part of Time Series Analyst I'd like to show is the bar on the right-hand side. So as you'll see, this bar here is the search bar. So anything that is involved in any of the variables for any of the sites will pop up in this search bar. So for instance, if we wanted to find water depth, you could search water depth, and it will pull up all information referencing water depth in the information or in all of the data. To your right, the next thing you'd see is search settings. If you were to click on that, it elaborates more on the search option. So you can have whatever you're searching be an exact match. or you can have what you're searching be case sensitive. Either of those are up to you for what you find best when you're searching for your purposes. So the next option over is show all, but we're going to come back to that. So this whole bar here works best for when you have data selected. So for instance, we can click 3 different variable points from 3 different sites to see how these work. So the first one I wanted to show you is show selected. So if you were to hit show selected, it removes all of the other variables except for the ones that you have selected. Then we're going to go back to show all. So if we were to hit show all, it then brings and shows all of the available variables for all of the sites again. Clear selected, which is the next option to the right. If you were to click that, clears any variables selected in this table. And then if we were to select these again, the option to the right of that is export selected. So if we were to click on that, what it would do is the program will export those 3 variables in an Excel sheet for you to access in your download folder. With this, you can do up to 5 variables. For this example, we're doing 3, but you can select up to 5 and export any 5 pieces of data that you wish. The last part of the menu that I want to show is the show and hide column on the far right-hand side of the menu under data sets, under time series analyst for Monitor My Watershed. So if we click show hide columns, it'll bring up a menu, and this allows users to check off different information that they would like to see in order to help streamline their data. So for instance, if we wanted to show the site code, the site name, and the state, for instance, and then click out, Monitor My Watershed will adjust and add in those variables that are selected. So when it says show and hide columns, it allows people to streamline and add different bits of information they wish to add when looking to decide what information to plot. So here they provide 6 or 7 different sites, and then to see all of them, you will need to click show more, which will provide you all of the different sites that include water depth. So from there, we're able to go and select variables that we can compare our data to. So for this, we can also select up to 5. So for what we're doing, we'll select punches run because that's what we've been looking at. You can hit select. We can also look at sites out by where I live because that's fun. We'll look at the unnamed tributary at Pike Creek School and Pike Creek and Independence School. And then we'll pick 2 other graphs. We'll do Pickering Creek at Montgomery, and we'll do Mill Creek. So we're able to then plot this information. We check the box to indicate plot, and then we'll go to visualize. And then it'll show us the graph for the same variable from multiple places. Again, the legend works the same way, that the colors are always going to stay consistent. So regardless of if you're checking different variables or if you're checking the same variable at different sites, it's always going to follow the color indication that we talked about earlier. Another way to use Monitor My Watershed is bypassing browse sites altogether and going straight to time series analyst in Monitor My Watershed. It's not the most effective way, in my mind, to use the platform. However, it is a way to use the platform, so I wanted to show how to use it. So if you were to open up Time Series Analyst and go straight to the map settings, you'll be presented with a map that looks like this. In order to make the map full screened, you will click on this button here. To switch between the views available on Time Series Analyst, you would click on either map or satellite. The map view is currently shown here. So if you were to click on map, this is the view that you look at. If you want to go further in depth into the map option, you can click on map. And you can choose to remove the terrain by unchecking this box. Which will remove the terrain. And by clicking it again, you can add the terrain back in. The next option is to switch from map to satellite. So if you were to click satellite, you'd be greeted with something that looks like this. And then to customize satellite, you can choose to add or remove the labels. To remove the labels, you can uncheck this box here, and it will remove any information on the image. And then to add the labels back in, you would click and check the box, and it would label in the countries again. Available in the bottom right-hand corner, like browse sites, under Monitor My Watershed, there is a legend available. So this legend has fewer options when compared to the browse sites option. So the main legend shows whether a site is an aquatic site or a climate site, or if it's a different type of site altogether. And then whether or not the site is an Enviro DIY site. So for instance, based off of this legend, this site here, Engineering South, is an Enviro DIY site, but fits in an other category. This site here, that is conveniently labeled Test Logging to MMW, is an Enviro DIY station that's also an aquatic site. And then up at the top, when you launch Time Series Analyst, you have a menu bar up at the top, and you have three choices. You have the map view, the datasets view, and the visualization. So if you were to bypass browse sites altogether and go straight to the map view, this is what you would get. Then to move on to datasets. Datasets shows you all the different variables available for all the different sites. You can select names, you can select variables, you can select sites by filtering out different pieces of information and selecting them here, or you can go through browse sites and select the variables you wish to see. If you were to open them in Time Series Analyst, you would be taken directly to this screen. And then the last option is the Visualization tab. The Visualization tab, once you selected the information you wish to see graphed, you would hit the Visualization tab. And what the Visualization tab does is show you the graph for the variable that you would like to see graphed. Similar to how the Time Series Analyst menu functions under datasets, the menu is very similar for the map setting as well. So users can select from a network a specific site they are interested in, as well as different variable categories and different variables available for the site. If you were interested in selecting filters, you could select a site. So for instance, we could pick, let's pick Quincy. And it will show you that specific site, which you can then click on. It will show you the network, the state if available, the site type, the county if available, latitude and longitude. You can open this site up and view data series, which will bring you to data sets. So now that we've pulled up Quincy, we can see all the different information available for this particular site. So then another option that you can do with Time Series Analyst is these two arrows that you see to the right of the new category that you're seeing. And then if you were to select the down arrow, it goes in reverse alphabetical order from Z to A. And if you were to click on the top arrow, it would take you in alphabetical order from A through to Z. That's available for all different menu options within the data series part of Time Series Analyst. So if you know the variable you're looking for and you want to sort by alphabetical order, you can do that. Another trick for Monitor My Watershed is if you were to click on the title Monitor My Watershed up in the menu bar, it will bring you back to the original homepage that you saw when you first logged in. When you click on Monitor My Watershed from Browse Sites, it will bring you back to this main website. However, if you were to do this with Time Series Analyst, if you were to click Monitor My Watershed from the Time Series Analyst view, it will load you and it will bring you directly to the map version of Time Series Analyst. If you were interested in getting back to the main homepage that we saw for Monitor My Watershed from Time Series Analyst, you'll have to go into the web address bar and either type in Monitor My Watershed or remove the TSA and / from the end of the URL. And that will bring you back here. So the last thing I want to show in this tutorial is how to get and find additional help resources if you are in need of help. So in order to do that, you would click on Help, and it will load wikiwatershed.org/help, and it will bring you to a site that will provide additional information and additional resources if help is needed with guiding through the program. So all of the different applications available through Wiki Watershed will be available on this site. So if we were to scroll down, you would see Model My Watershed, the runoff simulation, Monitor My Watershed for the Enviro DIY pack, the Monitor My Watershed for the Leaf pack, as well as the water quality mobile app and the macroinvertebrate.org map. But for our purposes, if you're looking for additional help on the Monitor My Watershed website, you would click View Help Resources. Which will provide you resources to help understand the material better. So if you have any questions or additional needs beyond this video, there will be a manual, a quick guide, a shorter video, and a full video available on the help part of the Monitor My Watershed resource page. And then if you're having issues with Monitor My Watershed, specifically that's a coding issue or an issue specifically with the website, you can also submit your specific issues to the Codemaster, who is actually coding the website or coding the application, and you would do so through the GitHub issue tracker. So before you click on and open up GitHub issue tracker, then we provide some already known issues that are either being fixed or the the taskmaster is aware of the issue and have already been notified and are in the process of fixing it. If you would like to submit an issue, you can go through GitHub issue tracker, or you can use the contact form to contact someone through Wiki Watershed to get a question answered. So this has been a video walkthrough on how to use Monitor My Watershed. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any additional information or have additional questions, please feel free and look through the additional help resources available through Wiki Watershed on this site here. And if you have any additional questions, feel free and contact Stroud Water Research Center with questions about Monitor My Watershed, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.